Hello, hello, check, check. Everybody hear me? Good. Thanks for bearing with us while we figured that all out. This is the developer's guide to promoting your work. Thank you all for joining me here today. Before we get too far in, I've had a little bit of an unexpected development happen to me in the last couple of weeks. If you're sitting in the front row, you might notice this odd differential down the middle of my face that isn't as pronounced as it was in this picture, because this was a couple weeks ago. I have developed a temporary, annoying, and very embarrassing thing called Bell's palsy, which is a totally temporary paralysis of half of my face. It's going to go away, so it's not a big deal, but it's caused by a latent virus, usually like a chickenpox virus, that waits until you're at your most vulnerable, when you're super stressed out, and then it pounces on you like, now's the time! And it infects one of your nerves in your face that keeps it from moving. In my case, I'm pretty sure that virus was JavaScript-based, because I have been kicking JavaScript's butt for a number of years, and it was just itching for a payback. But if I stutter or kind of trip over a word through this presentation, please forgive me. I'm still kind of struggling with this a little bit. All right, but on to the presentation today. So today you have a bunch of amazing talks about building and designing and maintaining your custom software. But I want to talk about what comes after you've built it. What comes next? How do you sell it? How do you sell the things that you're building? How do you sell yourself? How do you sell the products or your content or your consulting or whatever it is that you're building? Over the past 10 to 15 years of my career, I've stumbled and I've learned how to promote myself and the things that I've been doing. And it never really came easy for me at the beginning as a developer. I was introverted. I'm still introverted, trying to figure out how to talk to other people about my things. But being able to do this has totally transformed my career, and it can do the same for you. And this is really, really important for all of us to understand, because whether you realize it or not, we're all building a product right now. You're setting the foundations for what you're going to do in the future. You're in a team today with somebody who could be a partner of yours in the future. You're working on a problem at work that could be the next software product. Or you're thinking about a blog that you could write that could transform everything that you're doing. You never know what you're doing today is going to be the foundation of a product that you're going to go off and build. Regardless, you should be thinking about how to promote yourself, how to build that next product, how to talk to the people around you to be successful. Now, a common fallacy that developers have, and I certainly believed this for a long time, was that great products sell themselves. If you go off and you build a piece of software and it is, awesome, as it obviously will be, people are clearly going to flock to you, right? Everybody's going to run and use your software because it's just so good at solving that problem. And this is so incredibly wrong. There's so many fantastic examples in history of a superior technology failing because it did not successfully market itself. It didn't talk about itself. It didn't get the traction it needed to grow and get public adoption. In my experience, all great products are made using the same general process. First, you talk about the product. What is it going to do? What problem is it going to solve? Then you build some of it. You promote it before you build it. You should be talking about an idea before you start doing it, because you get ideas about whether or not it's any good, and what part of it is good, and what parts of your idea resonate with the people around you. And then you build it, and then you promote it a little bit more. And then you build it a little bit more, and you promote it a little bit more, and go on and on and on. But all throughout the process, you need to be talking about the thing that you're building. So today's presentation is crafted as 3 stories. 3 stories about me and how I learned to promote myself at different phases of my career and what I was doing. It's going to be real examples of what I was doing, what I was struggling with, and how I applied it. Related, it could also be a story about how hair has moved from the top of my head down around to the bottom over the last 10 years. But let's move to the first story. The first story is the story of Todd the consultant. So a number of years ago, I worked as an employee for a company called Big Corp. And it was probably a lot like a lot of companies that you might have heard of or worked for. It was kind of uninteresting. I was itching for something new, and I saw, hey, consulting might be the way for me. There are a lot of cool people I know who are consultants. So I went and bought a bunch of clip art and made some presentations, and I said, great, I'm a consultant now, hire me. But my first problem was, how am I going to find a client? Who's going to hire me to do work? And how do they know that I'm good at the things that I say that I'm going to be good at? How do I find clients? How do I tell people what I do? And the first way that I found to do this was this activity right here today. Going to conferences, going to user groups, and public speaking. If I could name a single thing that has transformed my career over the last 10 to 15 years, it has been this. It has been the willingness to come up on stage and share what I know and convince other people about a point of view. Having the opportunity to talk to the attendees and the speakers at all of these conferences, having the chance to talk to these brilliant, engaged people from all over the industry and all over the world has not only opened my ideas, my perspective to other ways of doing things, but it has built my network that helped me get my first few consulting clients and take off. And I didn't start off very good. In fact, I was really, really terrible at it. Here's a photo I found online of one of the first talks I did at a small conference called Twin City Code Camp. And this was a 90-minute session. 90 minutes of me sitting behind a desk, not looking at the audience at all, quietly typing very verbose JavaScript about how to accomplish a particular problem, and having typos all along the way. It was awful. It is out on YouTube, but I will not give you the link. I worked hard to develop my style as a speaker, to watch what I did and get better at it. It's intimidating. Being up on stage is super intimidating because you all are intimidating. You're smart people, you're sitting up over here judging me, everything I do, every slip up I make. And so it's a lot of pressure to be up on stage, but you can overcome it. For the first couple of years, I actually used to have a few shots of bourbon, maybe 20 minutes before I'd go on stage just to kind of level it out. I don't do that anymore, but it was a good coping strategy. I got better, and I developed my own style, a mix of storytelling and points and fun graphics and trying to tell jokes. And it has been transformative. It has opened all kinds of opportunities. Now, it doesn't just start all at once. To become a conference speaker, to start doing this, you don't have to just apply to a conference like Star Trek first. Now, you can, but the path that I took was starting small. I would go to a local user group, and I'd say, hey, I have this thing I'm working on. Can I talk for 10 minutes about it? Great. A 10-minute talk, informally, easy to do. And it gets through that first nerves. Use that, learn from that, work into a bigger conference. Do an hour-long session at a user group. Speak at a local conference. Speak at a bigger conference. And you can build on that, take the videos, take the learning that you have through that, and keep adding to them. And the great thing is that once you've built up, don't stop doing the smaller things, because it still gives you the practice, it still gives you networking, it still gives you great opportunities as you do it. Now, a piece of advice that I can offer that I think a lot of first-time speakers don't like it or don't think about this, but you should reuse your talks. Once you put all of the time and the effort into putting together a talk idea, don't just give it once and then walk away from it. Because the first time you give a talk is literally the worst time you will ever deliver it. Your jokes are wrong, your timing is wrong, everything about it is wrong. And it wasn't a very good performance. Because that's what it is, it's a performance. You are trying to educate people to your point of view and to communicate an idea. And the more times you do that to more groups of people, the better you will get at it. This particular talk, I think I've given about 12 or 13 times. And almost all of my talks I give at least 10 times over the course of their lifespan. Because I'll spend 80 to 120 hours preparing, rehearsing, and working out the ideas for a talk. and you want to get that time back for delivering the talk more and more times. So if you have the opportunity to go to a conference, this is the single best advice I can offer once you are at the conference, is always stick around for the after party. After the conference itself, after the sessions are done, after the people who are trying to get back home have all left, if you're still at the after party, those are the most engaged folks there. Those are the people who are looking to network and to make new connections. And that is when all of the best connections that I can recall coming from conferences have happened, at an after party, as the event is closing down, in the hallway track at the end, or at the bar afterwards. Always stick around for that one more drink. That's when magical connections that can transform your career can happen. So why does all this matter? I might be sitting up here trying to convince you to do literally the worst thing that you could possibly imagine. A lot of people are terrified of being up here. But it matters because you should get out of your comfort zone. It matters because when you are up here, you are building friends. You are building a network of people. When you go out to launch your product and you're ready to sell something, selling it to friends, selling it to your network is easier than selling it to strangers. We want our friends to win. We want the people we know in our lives to win and be successful. And so when we see that happen, we forgive their mistakes and we help promote them. One of the people who I met through public speaking was a gentleman named Corey House. I met him, I was speaking at an event and he was also speaking at it, and we were in the same time slot and we were nervously waiting in the hallway together when we met. And we chatted for a while and it was a great connection. And then when he went off and started making a bunch of Pluralsight videos, I promoted a bunch of the stuff he did. And I went off and started making a software product, and he promoted the stuff I was doing. And it was successful for both of us because we want our friends to win. And so because speaking at conferences helps you make friends, it will make your product launch easier. So let me help you. Friends do things for each other. I want to help you so that we become better friends. If you're interested in doing this, but you don't know where to begin, you don't know what user group to go to, you don't know what conferences look like, you don't know how much you should prepare, send me your idea. I'd be happy to look at it. That's my email address right there. Feel free to take a picture if you're interested and send it to me. I'd be happy to review anything that you'd like to do and give you critical feedback on how I think it can be better. So that was story the first, about Todd as a consultant and finding clients through public speaking. The second story is a story of Todd the entrepreneur, which I alluded to, which is what I was doing with Corey House. Now, after I'd been consulting for a few years, I began noticing patterns. I was building a lot of JavaScript apps. And you know what? All of them broke a lot. JavaScript's kind of flaky. And when you put a JavaScript app out in production, it tends to break in kind of unexpected and weird ways when users actually end up using it. And so I was working for a client, and we noticed this pattern. And so we built a little tool to monitor what the end user was doing so that we would get really detailed error reports. And it was awesome. And then I went on to another client, and you know what? They had the same problem. And so we built a little error monitoring tool for them that monitored, and it was a little bit better than the first one because we learned from it. And that was really valuable. And then we went on to a third client, and they had the same problem. And we're like, hey there, wait a minute. Maybe we should just build this error monitoring tool once and sell it to all of our clients. And that's what the start of Track.js was, which is a software as a service product that I started 6 years ago in order to drop in to large JavaScript apps and understand how the users were using it so that when an error happens, you get really detailed error information. So we spent, when we first launched it, it was nights and weekends, we were bootstrapping it. We built the product, we got it out the door, and we took it to a user group and we're like, here, it's done. and nobody cared. Nobody, we were expecting, hockey stick growth and the money to start rolling in and yachts in the Mediterranean and all that. But you know what? None of that happened. Nobody cared that software was done. Now it was time to move on and promote it. No matter what you think it is, the next feature, the next element of your software, that's not going to be the thing that transforms a failure into success. Chasing the tech is busy work once you hit a certain threshold. And so after thrashing on tech for more than a year, thinking about, I just need one more feature, after thrashing on that, I realized, I started to conceive that my job for this to be successful wasn't to code anymore. The coding was good enough. My job was to do all the other things that go into making a business successful. I needed to figure out, how do I be a marketer? How do I sell this thing to somebody who might be interested? How do I evangelize this work? How do I support the customers who are using us? How do I make sure that they're having a great experience? How do I do all of these things? And this wasn't who I was. I was a software developer. But these are the things that I needed to do. And I didn't have enough money, frankly, to hire these roles. I just needed to figure out, how do we do this in some responsible way that people want to interact with us and want to do it and not be scummy. So I was totally lost. The first thing I needed to figure out is, I'd been speaking at conferences for a while at this point, and I feel like I had a personal brand. But I needed to detach who I was from who the company was. Because the company wasn't just me, there were other people involved. Who is Track.js? Who do I want Track.js as a company to feel like? I needed to define, in kind of scummy marketing terms, the brand. Or in a much cooler way, the personality. What is the personality of this Track.js? And I looked out, and I found a bunch of boring marketing things, but I found this one thing that was interesting to me. This is a Twitter account called Fake Grimlock. Now, Fake Grimlock is a giant robot dinosaur from outer space that wants your startup to be awesome, in his own words. He's still online, but it's not as active as it once was. But it was this online persona trying to talk about how to market, how to start up your brand, how to start up a company in plain, simple terms. And there's tons of fantastic quotes from Fake Grimlock, but I want to read one to you now that epitomizes what I needed to do. I'm going to try and channel Fake Grimlock, which is going to be extra difficult given half my face is paralyzed. Most important step for build product is build product. Second most important step is build personality for product. No have personality, product boring. No one wants. Is your product bread or is it bacon? You always want to be bacon. You don't want to be the boring thing that somebody feels like they need to have. You want to be bacon, the thing that they want, they desperately are craving, that they want to interact with. How do you define your company in terms of trying to be bacon? And so this is a concept that Fake Grimlock calls the minimum viable personality. What are the things that you need to do in order to define your brand? Either your personal brand, your blog's brand, your product's brand, your company's brand, whatever it is that you're doing. First, how do you want to change the world? Second, what do you stand for? And third, what do you hate? Because unless you're against something, you come off wishy-washy and just vaguely positive. And so if you can answer these three questions, you have a mission, values, and an enemy. And that is enough to start a brand. So I approached these three questions for Track.js. How do I answer that? First, how do we want to change the world? One, there's a lot of really terrible JavaScript websites on the internet now. And they suck. And they break a lot. and they're slow, and they're full of like 10,000 spinners all loading at different times and causing all kinds of weird janky things. And that's not very cool. We want to help our customers fix that. We want to build a better set of websites by exposing those sort of errors from production. Second, what do we stand for? Our priority has always been simple tools. We don't want to give you a console command line and have to give you a custom query syntax. We want to give you obvious answers. So that's going to be our values, is simplicity. And third, what do we hate? Broken websites and bad errors. We took this a little too far. In the early days, even publicly shaming websites that had errors on their site on Twitter, or calling that out, which was obviously a mistake in retrospect, but it was a learning opportunity as we discovered. As you go off and do this yourself, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to find things that are wrong. Either you are going to build up some ideas that don't resonate with anybody, or some things that people might take offense to. And that's okay. Learn from it and get better. With anything that you're doing, you always have to learn from what you're doing and get better. So once you have a personality for this thing that you want to do, you need to build an audience. Who are the people that you want to talk to? And you have to remember, building an audience, that it's always about them. Nobody really cares about you and what you want. Everybody cares about themselves and what they want. And that's okay. That's what all of us are like. We're all interested in what are we going to get out of the situation. And so be aware of that. Help people get stuff that they need. So when you're building an audience, first you have to discover who they are. Who do you want your audience to be? In the case of Track.js, we wanted our audience to be people who have to write JavaScript. You know, it tends to be, the people who our audience tends to be the best are like .NET and Java developers who are building a backend and then have to build a front end as well. So figuring out what subset of developers made the most sense for us and our message resonated with was a long process to discover. Once you have an idea of who your audience is, you need to create things for them, free things. Like give them things that they need. Make useful things that your audience wants. So create log-form blog walkthroughs of complicated problems. Do a blog of like short-form tips or snippets of code to do things, news relevant to them. Record video walkthroughs of how to do something, or create an example or template out on GitHub of how to start a project. There's all kinds of examples of creating free things for the audience that you want to attract. And then once you know who they are, and you have things for them, go talk to them. Go to the communities that these people exist in and give them the stuff that you made. Start that conversation. Go to the user groups that they participate in, or the online communities that they're in, or the conferences that they're in. I'll give you a little meta example. I'm doing this right now. I've decided that this group right here are people who I want in my audience and I want to talk to. And I made something that I think is going to be valuable for you. I consolidated a bunch of tips about how I promote myself, and I'm giving them to you in ways that you can try and adjust to them. And then I'm here to talk to you and build my audience and give you something and see if this is helpful for you, see if this is useful for you, and if you want to be part of my audience and learn more. With everything you're doing, iterate. Stuff is going to be wrong. You're going to build something that's not as useful as you think it is. Or you're talking to the people who aren't the people who you want in your audience. Or people will just find you annoying. That's okay. Learn from that, change it, get better, get more refined with what you're doing. Now, if you're lucky enough to have a brand and you found an audience, and the audience is interested in who you are and what you do, and they want to learn more, you have a chance to give your elevator pitch. Your quick synopsis of what it is that you do and how you're going to make their life better. Having a concise, practiced pitch ready will let you take advantage of the random meetings that you'll have once you set up your audience correctly. And so if you're building an elevator pitch, there's a couple of things you need to have in it. You usually have about a minute to answer 3 key things. And you have to answer these things for it to be successful. First, quickly, what do you do? Don't spend 45 seconds explaining what you do. Explain that very quickly so you can get on to point 2. How am I better for this? How am I going to benefit from what you're doing? This is getting to their real question, is what do they get out of it? And then third, what's the next step? If they care about what they get out of it, if they see that as valuable, how do they take the next step? And if you do this a lot, you'll get rejected a lot. And that's okay. I mean, it'll give you a little hit to your ego, but it's okay. Because giving your pitch and getting rejected, or getting a, meh, that's kind of cool, I gotta go get some coffee, getting that tells you that it wasn't right. Either it wasn't the right person, it wasn't the right audience, or you gave your pitch wrong, or the product was wrong. And you'll have to do it a bunch of times to figure out which one it is, and kind of vary it up as you go. Because the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. You just have to iterate and learn from every time you do. So I want to show you an early example of my elevator pitch. Now this was a pitch that I took to conferences just like this one, and if I'd brought the right thing to the right audience, and people would come up to me and say, so tell me more about this thing you do, I would have this pitch ready to show them.
Hey, I'm Todd from Track.js. This is my business card demo that describes what makes Track.js awesome. So this is a JavaScript error, right? E is undefined, scripts.js, line 1. It's terrible. JavaScript has not been good about giving us good error information. And it sucks if this is all you have to go with to fix a customer problem. But the first thing is knowing that it happened. Because these errors, they don't happen in your servers where you have great logging tools. No, they happen in your users' browsers, and probably crappy ones like IE9. So the first thing Track.js does for you is let you know that it happened. And we tell you interesting statistics, like 80% of your customers who are on IE9 are running into this particular error on a URL. But that's just a start, because I don't know where to begin debugging E is undefined. So Track.js is listening to events that happened before the error to give you better context. Track.js polyfills and records console and makes it safe to use in all browsers. The console allows you to log on your client-side app like you log on your server and record interesting events and state changes in your application. In this case, we know that when the user first loaded the page, your application started initializing the user form. A few seconds later, your customer began interacting with your app and entered 16 email characters into this input. Track.js records interesting metadata about these user actions, but we never record the actual values to protect user privacy. After entering the email, the customer clicked on this button, and this AJAX event began, going to /API/users. It lasted 3,500 milliseconds before coming back with a 500. And that was the last thing that happened before this error occurred, which indicates the error probably has something to do with handling the response. We package all this information up with other interesting context about the browser and application for your developers. And with it, they can reproduce the exact series of events that led a customer to a problem and fix it quick. So that's Track.js. We're protecting 1 trillion pages a month and making the web a better place. I'd love to help you too. Check us out at trackjs.com.
So this was an early version of my elevator pitch. And there's a bunch of stuff that's wrong with it, but there's some stuff that worked really, really well. This was memorable because I had these things printed on the back of business cards. I used a service called moo.com, which lets you put art, like as many different pictures as you'd like on the other side of your business card. And most people do things like they put a quote or different pictures on the back of them. I actually took the core piece of UI of our product that I thought was most interesting and most compelling, and I created a story with these pictures. So that in my pocket, when I'd have a pocket full of business cards, I'd also have a demo ready. Even without a computer, without a phone, without a tablet, whatever, I could do a demo of somebody who was interested and say, here's this thing that I do. Here's what's awesome about it. Check out this thing that you won't get these weird errors anymore, or if you do, you'll know how to recreate it. And that was the compelling thing I wanted to get to. Now, this was a little too long, and it took a little too long to get to the point, which is why I don't necessarily do this exact elevator pitch anymore. But it was a great example, and it worked really, really well at the time. Now, if your elevator pitch works, and somebody's super interested, and you hand them your business card, and you're like, here's where you can go to learn more, you're probably going to take them to a website. That's kind of the first first landing place for most of the products that we're going to be building in our careers. Whether that's a software product, a blog, an online training company, a consulting, whatever, you're probably going to want to bring them to your website, which has your portfolio or your content or your service or whatever. And so when you do that, I want to talk about a couple of elements of page design that I think are really, really important. And I don't mean visual design and CSS. I mean things that a page should do from a business aspect that make them effective for marketing yourself. And so when you're putting together a web page to talk to your audience after they've already been interested and they've come to your website, you come to your, they should come in and land, every page should target a particular audience. Who are you talking to with this web page? A lot of big corporate websites fail miserably at this, where they're talking to everybody all at once. They're talking to prospective customers and current customers and investors and press all at the same time, and you don't even know what a page is trying to do. When you're building a page, don't make those mistakes. Think about one audience. Who is this person who's landing on this page? Are they an Angular developer who's having a problem right now and they're trying to look for a service that might help them? That's an audience. There should be one page that does that. Once you know who an audience is, you can give them a goal. Like, what do you want that audience to do on that page? And it should be super obvious. You should give them the ability to achieve that goal and give them all the reasons why they want to. Give them all of the things that they need to do in order to decide for themselves that they want to proceed to the next step. So I want to give you another example of how we do this again. Okay. This is the current trackjs.com, which has gone through lots and lots and lots of iterations. It's changed completely at least 6 times over those 6 years. But here's where we're at right now that kind of incorporate all of the different learnings. Now, the root page of trackjs.com is assuming you are a JavaScript developer who's not a current customer, and you're probably having a JavaScript bug right now in production, and you don't know how to solve it. That is who I think my audience is who lands on my homepage. And what do you think the goal that I want them to achieve is? I want them to start their free trial. It is a great big highlighted button on the top of the page. And everything on this page is designed to give them what they need to feel good clicking that button. So there's some text at the top about rescuing your JavaScript. And if you decide, you know what, I'm not ready yet, tell me more about this, you scroll down. We show logos of other companies who can give us some reputation, like, hey, here's some other people who use us. That's really cool. And another little blurb of text. And then if you want to see it before you buy it, there's some videos you can watch, like some short little clips about how to accomplish different things, and that helps. And then we highlight some features that they can go into and read more about. And then we ask them again, maybe, is that enough? Are you ready? Are you ready to start your free trial? And if they're not ready yet, they can keep going and find a few more things about, here's what makes us good, and here's some quotes from maybe some famous developers who you might know who they are. And if you land all the way at the bottom, there's one more chance to hey, click that free trial button. And there's a big counter that we're trying to use to give us some, reputability. Here's all these people doing it. But I know that our audience are JavaScript developers. And they're going to look at that number and they're going to be like, Todd, that's a public website, and that number's going really fast. That number's bullshit. I'm gonna prove that it's bullshit, and I'm gonna yell at you. And so they'll go in and they'll look at it. They'll look in the DOM, and they'll see a little note I left for them. Hey there, developer. As I'm sure you understand, it wouldn't be performant of us to get a precise session count for every visit. So here's the equation that we use to get this number. If you'd like to get the exact number, just email us at hello@trackjs.com and we'd happily give it to you. And you know what? I get at least one email a month of somebody who finds this. Because I know my audience are developers, web developers, and they're going to want to see how the things that they use work. And so understand your audience and play to them. This is both a joke and serious, which also kind of epitomizes our brand, where we try to be a little bit silly in what we do. But it's a serious message that, like, hey, I'm not going to make an AJAX request constantly from a public website. That'd be silly. We'll come back. Good. And as you build out your site, iterate. It's going to be wrong. You're going to do things wrong. You're going to make points that nobody cares about, or it'll be too slow, or it'll be too big, or whatever. But an important piece of advice, especially for web developers in the room, is as you go to build your website, don't overdo it. Because a lot of people starting their own thing tend to overdo the technology. Is they'll be like, I'm going to start a blog. First, I need to write a blogging platform. I can't write a blog post. I don't have a blogging engine yet. There's lots of technology out there that you can use. And you do not need to have the best, most performant, most flashiest, every technology under the sun website to launch using. You can just put an HTML file on an Apache server and launch. And that is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't waste all of your time micro-optimizing technology. The real questions to answer is who is your audience and what can you build for them that's valuable. And if you're not doing that because you're messing around with CSS, you're doing the wrong thing. All right, I want to move on to the third story. The story about how I learned to promote events. Now, as I've been doing Track.js for a while, I found this interesting thing with conferences that I would go to. Is I would go and I'd be hanging out at a conference, and the speakers would try and compete in interesting ways. Like, people would compete by how many animated GIFs can they get into their presentation. It'd be a little side bet people had. Or who got more laughs during their presentation would be a little competition that somebody would have. And a lot of speakers were doing this. And so I saw this need for an opportunity for people who really loved speaking to kind of show off. Not deliver content. Content was unimportant. But just to deliver jokes, just to show off funny GIFs, to make interesting technology observations. A place for everyone to come together after a conference, usually at a bar, and just laugh and joke and whatever. And so I created this thing called PubConf. Has anybody here ever been to a PubConf? I love it. Which one? In London. So I've done PubConfs in London, Oslo, Sydney, Kansas City, and Minneapolis. And they're all awesome, and they're all like different, unique events. PubConf was an emphasis on all of the conference things that happen during a hallway track, when we let our guard down, when we just have conversations with people. Many great companies in the world have a conference that they kind of make their own. So Microsoft has Build, Twilio has Signal, and at Track.js, we have PubConf. And I think that reflects our brand appropriately. So PubConf is a lot of fun, but I used all of the same tools and techniques to promote PubConf that I did with Track.js. So PubConf has a brand, it has a message, it talks on Twitter about what it does, it has a website with a core conversion, it does all of those same things that you could go to pubconf.io and look at. But I'm not going to necessarily get too much into it, I'm just going to gloss over it briefly. So PubConf, how will PubConf change the world? PubConf's trying to build relationships between developers who might not normally talk in a normal professional setting. What do we stand for? Nerdy tech jokes and adult beverages. That's who PubConf is. And what do we hate? Fake people and just tech trends. We generally make fun of tech trends. It is a comedy goldmine, making fun of whatever is the majority track at the conference we are doing. And so we also have a personality. You can see our personality reflected in our Twitter account. We talk about going to distilleries and eating hangover survival food. PubConf spends a lot of time on Twitter and a lot of social networks that I help drive. Some key ideas on how to be effective at a social network is first, when you're tweeting, be positive. Being negative and going criticizing is a really easy way to lose connection with your audience. And so somebody here was making fun of JavaScript in response to us, and so we kind of lightened it up with our prescription to save JavaScript, more beer. Be real. Talk like a human, not like a robot. So talk like a real person would talk. Be casual. You should stay active. You can use tools to help things like this. Things like Hootsuite or Buffer will allow you to make sure you're tweeting during important times during an event, even when you're not able to do it. So during the week before a PubConf event, there are tweets scheduled to go out every 2 hours. They're targeting the hashtags of the conference that we're at to make sure that PubConf looks like it's active and it's engaged in the event, even if the people involved are otherwise occupied and can't be staring at their phones. So here's an example. This was a pre-scheduled tweet to go off an hour before an event was supposed to start. I'm parched. Let's go get a beer at the Scotsman. And be focused. Twitter and most social networks at their heart are marketing platforms. So avoid controversy not related to you. It unnecessarily alienates people. If often but incorrectly quoted from Michael Jordan was a quote, "Republicans buy sneakers too." He didn't actually say that, but it's often attributed to him. And the point is that don't let a opposite belief in your ideology sway business means. You don't need to hold every single thing up as a blocker. It's okay to repeat yourself as you're talking about things. People are all over the world, and people don't religiously follow your Twitter account. It's okay to just tweet the same things multiple times for different time zones. Okay, here's our website. I'm not really going to look at it. The audience for this is a conference attendee who might want to come to PubConf. What do I want them to do? Buy a ticket. And everything else in this page wants to get them to buy a ticket. But I'm going to skip over the rest of that. I'm going to get into the real things that I want to talk about with regard to PubConf. Dangerous marketing material. If you don't work in marketing, don't worry. We're going to talk about this in practical software developer terms. We're going to talk about the funnel. How many of you have heard the funnel mentioned at your place of work? All right, a few. Mostly at agencies, right? If you work at an agency? No? All right. So the funnel is an architectural model. It's not often referred to as that, but it's a part of your architecture for how well you can sell, acquire, activate, how well you can get people who might want to use your software into people who do use your software. All of the steps involved in that is represented by the funnel. And if you go into it, the funnel represents leads coming in the top, people who might want to use it, and going through all of the different steps that it takes them, that your platform, your service, your product requires, between when they first land, all the things they need to do in order for them to become a user. So the user lands on a page, they do one thing, they sign up, they do the next thing, they do the next thing, and eventually give you money and become a customer. So for PubConf, here's the funnel as we represent it for PubConf. So from the top, I want them to visit pubconf.io. They land on the page. Then I want them to look at who is speaking at the next PubConf event. I want them to look at the people and read the jokes that they left there. Then I want them to look at what the tickets are, how much they are when they release, etc. And finally, I want them to buy a ticket. Those are the steps that I expect people to take to become a customer of PubConf. What your steps are should be something that you think about. Because whether or not you've thought about your funnel, you have one. And if you haven't thought about it, chances are there's a lot of complicated steps that could probably go away and make it easier for customers to give you money. You should try and have as few goals or as few steps as possible for people to give you money. So when you put together your funnel and you've thought about it and you figured out what are the steps that we need people to take, how do you know this works? How do you know your funnel is operating well? How do you know what parts of it work well and what parts of it work poorly? The funnel is a software system, just like any other part of your architecture. And so how do you know other pieces of software work or not? You write tests. Analytics are tests for your funnel. An analytics suite can help you understand which of your goals are succeeding and failing. And so you build analytics using tools like Google Analytics, KISS metrics, Bear metrics, all those kind of tools. You build those kind of analytics tools into your application so that you can test your assumptions and understand which parts of your funnel are working and which ones are not. So when you put in analytics, don't just throw it in, slother all over your app and measure everything, because it's too much data and nobody cares. Instead, make sure you're testing what your funnel is. Make sure you understand every step that you defined in your funnel, and you understand how many people start that and how many people finish it, so that you can look at that and understand which parts of your funnel are working well and which ones are not. So here's some analytics. This is Google Analytics, measuring performance on a page. What is a passing test for you? If you're testing software, it's usually, pass or fail. It's very binary. But is this a passing or a failing grade in analytics? I don't know. It's contextual. It's subjective. And so here's some data from PubConf that we can look at. So for a particular time period that happened to work out really, really well, there were 1,000 people who hit the event page. And of that, 196 went on and looked at the speakers, 140 looked at the event, or looked at the tickets, and 118 bought a ticket. And so that roughly translates to these conversion rates as we go down. So only 19% looked at the speakers, but 71 went on to view tickets, and 84 went on to buy tickets. And so if I think about that as a test, I would say that the first part of my funnel is failing. I am not grabbing enough attention from the top to get people to look at the speakers. But once they've done that, I'm doing a really good job of converting the rest of the way through. Overall, I have a conversion rate of about 11%. So let's get back to the funnel itself. We get leads in the top, some percentage of them become customers. If we can figure out how much it costs to find a lead, and we can figure out how much a customer is worth, we can turn the funnel into like a machine that prints money for us. So we have dollars going in the top to like buy leads through advertising, and a percentage rate of them that convert. And then we get money out the bottom when people give us money as customers. So first we need to figure out what does it cost to get a lead. And this is usually done through advertising and measured in cost per click. So what does it cost you to get a click through advertising platforms like Google or Facebook or Twitter or whatever? There's tons of other ways of generating leads for free through content and public speaking and organic search results and all those sort of things, but they're much harder to measure. So for the purpose of this, we're going to talk about like concrete dollar things like advertising. So for PubConf, Twitter seems to work really, really well for advertising. So let's take a look at some of the metrics there. Here's some advertising that I did for a PubConf event. And I created an ads for each different speaker. So I could do interesting things with the data, like compare, how many people clicked on Damian Brady's ad versus how many people clicked on Lindsay Pageant's ad, and rub it in their face, but I won't do that. Because what's really important here is this top number, is how much it cost me in Twitter in this overall advertising campaign to get a click, which was $1.17. I paid $1.17 per click for this advertising campaign, which I think was pretty good. And so if I put that in here, I can get a lead for $1.17 through Twitter. And I already showed you through analytics that my conversion rate of that funnel is about 11.8%. And so I have a couple of numbers here. And so if I put them together, we can figure out exactly what it costs for me to, quote unquote, buy a customer, which is roughly $10. At $1.17 cost per click, 11% of them fall through as customers. It costs me about $10 in advertising dollars to buy a customer for PubConf. And so now I know what this machine does, but I don't know if it's a good idea. I don't know if paying $1 to get 10, is to get $10 in, or to pay $10 to get a customer. I don't know if it's a good idea to pay $10 to get a customer. I need to know, what is a customer worth to me? Understanding what is the lifetime value of your customer, which will be very different for each kind of thing you do. If you are writing a blog, the lifetime value of a customer is probably very, very low. It's probably just a few cents. It's whatever you would get in terms of your own advertising revenue of ads you put on your page. If you're an enterprise consultant, your lifetime value per customer might be tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how much that client is going to pay you over what period. For PubConf, PubConf is an event, and so I know that a typical PubConf event costs about $30, and once we hold an event, about 50% of the time, somebody who goes to PubConf will come back the following year. And so I have a 50% return rate. And so roughly, the cost or the value or the lifetime value of a PubConf customer is $45. I will get about $45 in revenue from a customer. And so a good rule of thumb is that your cost to acquire a customer needs to be a third or less of the lifetime value. And the reason for that is you need to make some money on these customers that you're buying, right? You need to have enough money to deliver the service and to make money on so that you can pay your mortgage and buy beer and all that sort of stuff. So if we put this all together here, I can buy a customer for $10 that's worth $45 to me. So that I can I pay $10 to acquire a customer that's worth $45 to me. Or in other words, PubConf is a machine that takes $10 in the front and buys $45 worth of beer, which I think is a fantastic machine to have under my belt. So that was my third story, the story about how I promote events that bring together the developer community and have a lot of fun and tell a bunch of jokes and promote Track.js along the way. So I told you 3 stories today. The first, about becoming a consultant, where I started speaking professionally. The second, building your audience through Track.js, how to figure out who the people you want to talk to is and build things for them. And third, measuring your funnel. Once you have something, how to build a tool so you understand how you get money out of it. How do people land on your service, discover it, and give you money? Thank you so much for bearing with me and our technical problems at the beginning. I will be outside this theater to answer questions if you'd like, or I'll check Slack here in a minute. Thank you so much for coming. Enjoy the rest of your day.